Welcome, Savvy Seeker, to the Spiritual Phoenix Podcast. This is your audio oasis and paranormal portal. You can experience legendary guests, thought-provoking tarot readings, astonishing astrological forecasts, and exposure to ideas intent on igniting your unlimited inspiration. Subscribe today to keep your fire burning. One last thing, you are encouraged to reach out and ask questions. Become a part of the show. Now, please enjoy today's episode. All right, welcome back, everybody. We have Stefanie Caponi here with us today. Stefanie, what is up?
Hey, Ross, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing reasonably well. Hopefully we can get through this without Mercury retrograde fucking over this recording.
Yeah, this is like, what, take two?
Right. So last week we had talked about the Queens. If you want the recap for that, y'all can go back and listen to it. This week we are going to be talking about Temperance and the Kings, correct?
Yes, I'm excited. I love Temperance. It's one of my favorite cards.
When I started putting tarot cards on the back of my phone, I actually started with Temperance because of the meaning of it. Like, it really resonated with me. And ironically, like, before we started recording, I said that, like, talking about this stuff usually helps me. And then touching base with, like, what Temperance really stands for, the little bullet points I have is, like, balance and purpose. And kind of, I need to reestablish some of my balance. And part of my purpose is navigating through the difficult things I've been going through lately. So it's always synchronistic how this stuff lines up in my life, I guess.
I could not agree more.
So I'm not going to hold your card up. Let's talk about the Moon Void Tarot card first, though. What does Temperance mean to you?
I agree with you in the traditional sense of the balance. I learned it a little differently, though. And I know. So as you can see depicted on cards that kind of follow the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition, it's always the angel pouring the water between the two cups. And he's got like a foot on land and a foot in the water. And kind of the way that I learned it was that it was this balance of fire and water. And how when those two, and you can see on a Moon Void Tarot card, it's the two feathers that are kind of crossed, kind of symbolic of the angel. And there's water kind of raining down onto fire, but the fire doesn't go out. It continues to burn. So when you combine those elements, fire and water, you typically get steam. But in this instance, because the angel is involved, and the angel signifies divine, universe, source, whatever you want to call energy that's bigger than us. It represents alchemy. And it's basically, the way I learned it is that when you're working towards something and you're putting your efforts towards something and you ask the universe for some divine intervention, and this card comes, it's one telling you to take your hands off the wheel, because the universe is going to give it to you in a better way than you could do in your human self. And also it's about timing, like, and having a lot of patience while that alchemy happens, because it's not instant.
This is the most frustrating card I've ever heard, then. No, I'm just joking. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's okay. It's always interesting to explain this card to people when I'm reading for them that aren't familiar with tarot archetypes. And they just see this and they're like, what does that mean? They're like, temperance, that means like tempering, you know? And you're like, it's a cardinal virtue. And when you're like, I almost want to say, like, when you're on a diet.
It's like abstaining from alcohol, too. It's like a more traditional understanding of it as well. It's interesting, though, like the concept of tempering steel, though, really is similar to alchemy in the sense, because the heating up of it and all of that stuff and then cooling it down is actually what makes it more hard. Just like this kind of process is what gives you more stability overall if you're able to navigate through it. The alchemy concept definitely is true. And it's interesting because, like, looking at the symbolism on the Rider Smith Waite one, like the foot in the water, foot in the land to me is kind of like being grounded, but being in your, like, all up in your feels, like kind of being able to objectively pull back, but also witness what's going on. And then there's kind of these, I don't know what type of flower those are. What kind of flower would you say that is on the Rider Smith Waite?
They look like irises, maybe.
Okay, the yellow iris. So it's kind of like navel chakra, sense of self. Like you have to have a strong sense of self and be grounded in your heart because of the green behind it to kind of go through the process and not completely fucking destroy yourself. But there's also like the sun rising over these difficult things in the back, which kind of the long trail there to me would be relative to the patience aspect of it.
Yes.
And kind of like the Jesus take the wheel moment.
Jesus take the wheel. Yeah. No, but seriously, like if you're looking at that, at the symbolism, you have basically an angel touching the earth. So you have like that, our earthly body and our spiritual body kind of meeting to alchemize what is in your highest and best. And so a lot of times people are like, oh, I asked for something and it didn't come true. Well, it wasn't in your highest and best.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to let go of what your ego perceives that it wants to make room for what's actually best for you. And then also realize that it's a path, like you said, that like long road, it's a path towards what you want.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. One of the things that I have to say in recovery often, if I'm doing good with everything, I'll say it every morning, but it's the third step prayer. And it really is kind of like getting out of my own way so the universe or God or whatever can kind of guide me through stuff. And it's take my will in my life, guide me in my recovery, show me how to live. So it's like, I normally mess a lot of stuff up. Universe, can you please help me navigate this and not totally self-destruct?
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we don't, because it takes a long time, we forget that this process was even taking place. Because by the time you get what it is that you were working towards, sometimes you don't recognize or remember that you asked for it because it didn't look like the thing that you had initially asked for.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Do you believe, since you're more versed in law of attraction than me, since I have some kind of residual scorn towards it, do you believe that like when you kind of interfere with that stuff that you're blocking your blessings or making them take longer?
So I hate saying blocking your blessings because what's meant for you will never miss you. But if there's let's pretend there's like a faucet on and there's water running, but you can't see it, and you put a plate in the middle of it because I'm going to do something different now, then you kind of like, you sever that stream and then the water has to form a new path.
So you delay the inevitable.
And it may not even be a delay. It's just now it's going to take a different form.
Interesting.
But you'll always get to like the thing that you asked for. It's just going to come in a different way. And the more you fuck around with it, then you're going to learn all sorts of other things that go along with it. And maybe you needed to learn those things. Like there's never any like regret, or I guess like whenever something that is unpleasant happens, as soon as I can get through the initial pain of the moment, then I try to like zoom out and be like, okay, like what did I learn from this? Because I know that this is a gift that's going to help me later.
Very cool. Yeah, that's definitely a good perspective. Sometimes it takes longer than others, but it definitely is a good perspective.
Yeah. So another thing about temperance is when this comes up, I feel like it's the universe also saying like, hey, like what you want is on its way. In the meantime, stop focusing on it. Focus on something else that you're curious about or brings you passion and excitement. Like go learn something new, go, keep yourself busy, basically doing
It's,
something different.
it's like the meanwhile back at the ranch type thing.
Yeah.
Meanwhile back at the ranch.
I have tons of examples of this card in action. I don't know if you want me to tell you a couple.
No, please elaborate.
It was a cool story. When we learned this card, my teacher, she gave us like a story, and I probably am butchering it because it's years ago. But basically, she was doing a reading for a woman, and the woman was getting the reading because she was at a certain age, and she was like, all I want and all I can think about is having a baby. I really want to be a mother, and I'm not even dating. And I have no prospects, and dating is horrible, and like it's awful, and I don't know how this is going to happen. She's like, but I feel this like deep need and want and desire, and like it's time for me to have a baby. And when she did the spread, Temperance came up as like kind of like what to do, and it was like, okay, you're going to have a baby. It's not going to be how you think you're going to have a baby, but it's going to happen. So in the meantime, do something different. Like, what have you been wanting to try? What have you been curious about? How can you fulfill a different dream, basically, that you can control? And she was like, well, I've always like had this strong urge to volunteer at an orphanage. She was like, because then I could be around children and I could be of service, la, la, la. So the reader says, go do it. So the woman puts her stuff in storage, takes a leave of absence from her job, and goes to whatever country this orphanage that she wanted to volunteer at was. And when she got there, she was like walking down the hallway, and people were walking past her. They were holding a baby, and the baby reached out and touched her, like as they passed. And then they stopped, everybody stopped, and she was like touching the baby, and the baby, I guess, had been crying and stopped, went in her arms, and was like a moment, and everybody felt it. And they were like, holy shit, this is your baby. And she was like, whoa. And they're like, well, we can't just hand you a baby. As much as we want to, because we obviously want this child to be cared for, and you just showed up willing to care for this child, so we're going to put you in touch with an attorney that can help with the legalities. And so they bring her to the attorney, and they do the work to make this baby like legitimately hers. And don't you know that she and the attorney fell madly in love and ended up getting married, and that's their child.
Oh, wow. That's like definitely some storybook stuff.
It's like some Temperance stuff. Like when you can like look away, which I feel is the tempering process. When you're like, okay, I see that my desperation for what I want to happen is unhealthy and not serving me. And I love myself, and I believe in this thing strong enough that I can turn my attention towards something else. And then the universe is like, all right, I'm ready to get in the game and help you out.
I like that story. I like that concept too. I have a question for you. What is the astrological significance of Temperance?
Oh, I think it's Sagittarius.
I like the quality of your voice when you said that.
Because I was like, I should look this up beforehand. I have like, in one of my many unpublished books, I have a whole section of tarot and astrology.
You sounded like a high school basketball coach when you said it, though.
Cool.
I think it's Sagittarius.
If you would have seen me in high school playing basketball, you would know how inaccurate that is. I don't know about you. You wear glasses. How's your depth perception? Can you shoot a ball at a basket? Because I cannot. Actually,
pretty good. These glasses, like my eyes are just a little bit off. They're more so when I'm driving. I just use them now when I'm in front of my computer because they have stuff to block the blue, like the UVs and stuff like that.
Nice.
Yeah, they're more for nerd purposes than they are for necessity.
Nerd purposes. What does that even mean?
I'm just in front of my computer a lot, typing away at things.
That makes sense. All right. Why can I not find the answer? I'm trying to stall you so I can like fact check myself.
Uh-oh.
But I'm pretty sure that it's either Sagittarius or Jupiter, because Jupiter rules Sagittarius. So let me just make sure that I know which one it is.
I have a book here too. I can look it up and see what it says. I don't know why I didn't think of that.
Because it's Mercury retrograde and we're not thinking.
Yeah. I got woke up at 12:45 last night too, and I haven't fallen back asleep since.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's Sagittarius.
Okay. All right. I was right. Thank goodness.
And what is Sagittarius all about?
Sagittarius is a fire sign. And Sagittarius is like the knowledge seeker and the truth seeker and the expander. They're ruled by Jupiter, which I think is interesting that this is like a card about alchemy, because I feel like that's some very Sagittarian territory to be in.
Excuse me. I just had a coffee burp. Very cool. Yeah, I really want to study more of the astrology and the tarot stuff because there's a lot of stuff I could learn. I think it'd be a good portal into astrology as well for me.
Well, that'll be our next show that we do.
Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum.
I'm definitely down about that.
Stay tuned for Astrology 101 with Ross and Stefanie.
That'll be interesting. I'll definitely be the bumbling sidekick for that.
Yeah. So do you have any anecdotes or stories of a temperance moment in your life?
Like the alchemical process of everything.
We can come back to that if you can't think of one off the top of your head. I should have asked you in advance.
Oh, you're all good. Yeah, I can't think of anything. I'm sure that like my whole life has been built upon that premise, but none stick out to me more than another at this moment. So let's move on to the Kings, and we'll see if something like jostles itself up as we move forward.
Nice. Which one do you want to start with today?
Ladies' choice.
Oh boy. All right. So let's start out first, of course, by saying that at least in the Moon Void Tarot, there are not people represented on the court cards. They are more looking at the energy of the alchemical symbols of kings are fire paired with their respective suits. So if we started with the King of Swords, that would be fire of air. So the highest expression of fire paired with the highest expression of air. That way we can take gender out of the equation. The gender king portion of it has to do with the fire aspect, being fire is action oriented or masculine energy, whereas the queens were water, which is receptive feminine energy. No genders. That's like my little like PSA I have to say. Like I hate it when somebody pulls it up and they're like, this is your soulmate. This is your King of Swords. And you're like, no, man, like that's not actually true.
You're doing it wrong.
Not wrong, just like a little antiquated.
I'm just messing around. So do you want to start with King of Swords?
Sure.
So you had said that it's fire and air.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that would kind of just be like creatively minded, like mind towards creation. What do you get from it?
I think that's really interesting that you said that because of the creative element or the creative aspect to the element of fire, because typically from what I've learned, this is a card that doesn't feel creative to me. And so that's like a new way of looking at it, because when I think about the King of Swords, I think about taking clear, decisive action.
Okay.
And usually that doesn't, and you know what, now it's like, okay, creative problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
But it is kind of leaving emotions out of the equation, because it's having that clarity of mind and clear speech and strong speech, and saying, saying what needs to be said with that like fire action element of it. And when I think of creativity, I always feel like there's some kind of emotion behind that. I never gave it its maybe fair shake. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're definitely welcome. It's interesting too how you bring up the clear communication, because I was looking at the robe on the Rider Smith weight, and it is that light blue of the throat chakra, which is all about communication. It's super interesting because I don't know that they necessarily intended to do those colors with the chakras. I don't know that they didn't, but it's cool to kind of see those aspects reflected in there.
Yeah, definitely.
Let me ask you something about the moon void, Tara. So the little stars on those lanterns, what do those represent to you, or were they just decorative?
They were just decorative, because the card felt very stark to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't have any purpose for those little stars, other than I was trying to make it. Who knows? That's the funny thing, is I don't really remember drawing any of this. So
What's really funny,
obviously
though,
I did it, but I don't have any recollection of doing it.
What's super funny to me is I said that it has this creative mind principle of it, and you added creative stuff to it for no reason beyond it wanting to be creative, and you didn't ever associate that with the card itself.
That's funny. I love it.
And then you had talked about needing to have emotion for creativity, and you created without emotion too. You just did it. That's one of the fascinating things about when you really get into the zone. I feel like that it just comes from somewhere.
Yes, it comes from source. You channel it.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of the concept? This is kind of off on a tangent, that ideas have people more so than people have ideas.
Yes.
Yeah, that idea had you. It had a Stefanie Caponi.
I mean, if you think about it, if you subscribe to the belief that we're all connected, that anytime we're engaging in this way, we're tapping into the collective consciousness, which is something we all share. So the ideas come, and it's like surfing. You're catching a wave. The wave is available to every person in the water who's open to catching the wave. All you have to do is be kind of there to receive it. We are all channels. I think people just don't give themselves that kind of credit. They don't believe that they could do something, but if you have any engagement in your creativity, then you can you can channel poetry, you can channel writing and painting and drawing and anything that comes, and you give it form.
Mm-hmm. The term channel is so interesting too, because it really has that fluid aspect and that kind of opening up of yourself to let this flow through you more so than anything. It's such a really looking at those words is really always neat. I feel like since we're talking about channel, the next transition, do you have anything else you want to add to the King of Swords?
I don't think so.
I think we should go to King of Cups next, since it's watery and we're talking about the channel aspect.
Yes. I love the King of Cups, because it's that balance of the highest expression of fire and water. And that's a really tough balance to have all of that intensity and all that fire, and be able to keep yourself in check and balance your emotions, and almost be a strong container of strongly contained, but then become a container for others.
Yeah, talking about the fire and water, just and you talking about the intensity of it, it just makes me think of when you have a tea kettle and it's on high and it's just like whistling and bubbling and like shaking from all the intensity of it. But it also goes into that concept that you were talking about in Temperance too, of like the steam and that kind of fifth element as well. Would you say that? Or no, not so much?
No, I like that. Definitely. Yeah, the kings are all very interesting in the sense that I feel like because they're at that highest expression, they don't really give a shit and they're going to do what needs to be done for everybody else. Kind of almost emperor energy because of the fire component and the action element of it.
I mean, the 14 of it too would be like a magician and the emperor kind of coming together and having like some love child.
Exactly.
I'm trying to think of how to phrase this question. I guess I'll ask this other question and then try to come up with something based on that. What does the little seashell on your card represent?
Oh, this is a card that represents Pisces.
Okay.
So it has the two fish swimming in different directions. Is my nod to Pisces.
Being a Pisces, those fish upset me because I also have bipolar disorder. And I'm like, God damn it, even my sign is like going two opposite directions. That's just my own personal thing. And as far as like the little is that laurel leaves?
It's it's funny because in the cups it is like laurel wreaths, like victory. Like it almost looks like a trophy. Like you won for being emotionally contained, and you won and you're victorious because you are tapped into it's emotional intelligence. Like this card, I would sum it up by saying it's emotional intelligence.
It's a really good way to put it.
And then being compassionate to other people and helping them tap into that in themselves. That's the gift of the kings, is that they have tapped into these emotional intelligence, and like the King of Swords is obvious, like high intelligence, but using it wisely. Like a king rules a kingdom. People are looking up to that energy.
Yeah, I think that I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, you.
I was just going to say that sometimes when you're doing a reading and the kings come up and people get kind of confused because they want to put that energy outside of themselves. They're like, well, who is that I can look up to for that intelligence and that strength? And it's like, how are you not seeing it in yourself? Like a lot of times we put our power outside of ourselves. And I feel like the king energy is when it's time to recognize it in yourself.
I like that. With the Rider Smith Waite one too, it's interesting because they have the king kind of in this solid foundation with the water all around them. Like, so with their emotions kind of going all around them, they're still in that stable position of ruling things, I guess. And that they have the light blue on their robe too, so still able to communicate how they're actually feeling, but from a stable position. And then kind of that dirty green in some way, which I wouldn't say is like their heart's a little bit dusty, but it's like there's still that love element, despite being in the depth of it all. I never realized he had a little fish on his necklace before.
Yep, the Pisces.
I don't know, that would be a very appropriate thing to wear in summer. That would probably smell kind of weird.
Yeah, if you can, when you look at the Rider-Waite-Smith, he's sitting and he's very stable and he's on like this concrete block that looks pretty level with the horizon, and yet the waves are crashing all around, but he's not going anywhere. So that's why I feel like it's that emotional stability in the midst of like turmoil, which is like on the Moon Void Tarot, the water isn't bubbling over the top, even though it's surrounded by fire.
It's still like very stable and chill.
Yeah.
tying this into my personal life, since I didn't really have a story for Temperance, it's interesting to see kind of the King of Cups come up, because I've been going through a lot of emotion, like I had said, and just from like being able to meditate and pull myself back in, like it's been this constant process of kind of reeling myself back in, and then really understanding that although I'm kind of emotionally raw right now, realistically, like I haven't really done anything self-destructive like I normally would. So it really is kind of that harnessing of my emotions and still feeling them, not suppressing them. But at the end of the day, like nothing bad has happened. I think part of the thing that makes it so difficult is I'm so used to bad things happening when I feel that way. Like I'm like, something bad is going to happen, but really nothing has happened. So
That's wonderful. Yeah, I feel like we're collectively being put through some major triggers. And it's interesting because in the past, I think people, you, me, everyone would just act from like fight or flight in that, and just react rather, that's the word I'm looking for. They would just react when these things would happen, and leading to, that's the self-destructive behavior. Whereas now when you're presented with these triggers, you're noticing.
mm-hmm.
And your first instinct then becomes, oh shit, something bad's going to happen. The other shoe's going to drop, but it's not. It's really just here for you to say that you're capable of experiencing unpleasant things that don't need to lead to the self-destructive behavior. Because I think, you've moved past that. I've moved past that. We're now choosing differently.
Mm-hmm.
And we wouldn't notice it had we not been presented with something that is a reminder of our old selves.
That's a really good way to look at it, because in my understanding too, Mercury retrograde in general, or kind of like a lot of the stuff that's going on right now, is kind of just like the how do I want to put this, like the recap lesson, or like the midterm for some of these things. I don't know if midterm is the appropriate term, but like it's the refresher course.
Yeah, absolutely. We are, we are presented with things, and I had said before that we don't necessarily recognize them. And when you start to recognize them, then you can start to notice your own patterning. And then for me, I'm like, oh my God, I'm repeating my past. Like I'm seeing it so clearly now that this is the same thing that I've done like so many times. And then I'm like, oh, but instead of, I'm not repeating it, I'm just being made aware of it because I've chosen different. And now the universe is kind of saying like, hey, you passed this and now you can move on, but you need to be aware, because it's important that we give ourselves some friggin' credit for. That's, I think, another reason we talked about blocking blessings with Temperance, because we don't give ourselves any credit for when we finally overcome our challenges. Mm-hmm. Instead, we just continue to beat ourselves up.
For like when we're fucked up in the past or whatever. Not right. Really acknowledging, hey, I did good this time.
Yeah. Just to give it even more form, somebody brought it to my attention that I'd been so hard on myself and so bummed out about where like my finances are in terms of all of the work that I've done, and wanting to see different, wanting to see further results. And I think a lot of people are going through this as well. And he was like, you're missing that, how far you've come. You're only looking at it as you haven't achieved the financial success that you're used to and the standard that you always hold yourself to. He's like, but when you were at that financial level previously, your emotional self was in the toilet because you never paid attention to it. Mm-hmm. He's like, so look at that evidence in other ways, and just know, kind of like Temperance, that the road to that part of the evidence that you want to see is different. So you're not recognizing it, but it's coming. You just have to kind of veer off and go with what you're really passionate about.
I can relate to the money thing too, because that's one of the things that's really been coming up for me. Is like I've been working so hard with everything with my business and all that. And like I'm not where I want to be financially, but realistically looking at things where I was a year ago or where I was at 2 years ago with everything, like what I'm doing now was like not possible then. There's still a long way to go, but it really is about looking at the road markers, and for me too, understanding that like I'm not in this for the short term game. I'm in it for the long term haul, and like building up something that I'm going to be growing into the rest of my life, rather than getting the quick money and then moving on to something else. Like I'm completely creating a career and a future for myself. So I think that if it took off very quickly now, it would probably fizzle out before I did. I think I'd have a lot of like life left to live with that.
Yeah. I think people are so used to the instant gratification of this human existence. And also the way things are portrayed on social media and the comparison. And we forget that everybody has a completely different path than us, even if they look similar. And just because we're only seeing a small snippet of their journey, that we can't put ours up against theirs. I think the Kings also teach us that lesson of, the Kings had to go through Ace through 10 and through Page, Knight. Like they had a long way to go to get to just that level of self-actualization. You can't look at a king as a success point. It's a point of self-actualization. And then you go through it all over again. When you reach that, oh, okay, I'm here emotionally and physically and creatively and with all the different elements, then you're like, okay, now I'm ready to be a fool again. Now I'm ready for a new ace or however, it's like a cyclical process.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. Real quick, and then we can move on to the next card. I just changed my card over on the back of my phone screen to the Magician. So like I'm going through those kind of magician pains of like understanding how much I create my own reality. And it's not very pleasant to go through all of that again. We were talking about money though. So I'm curious, do you want to move on to the King of Pentacles?
Sure.
So what sticks out to you the most on your card? Like what is your key points?
So I like that I have the skull because it's like the bare bones of like the foundation of we are carbon-based substance. And then it's kind of like also kind of like that death rebirth with like the leaves and the vines kind of growing out of it. And no matter what, like this is a card about obviously like material stability. And the passion and the drive, and now we'll add creativity in there to get to that place of stability. And I put the vines in there because it's always growing. You're never at one place. You'd never with one job that's going to be your end all beat all. And it's always shifting. So not to stay too attached, and the skull, because it's like not to stay too attached to the material realm.
Let me ask you this then too. Do you view King of Pentacles as kind of heart-centered in what they're creating as well?
It's funny because it's not really how it's taught. Like there's not a lot of heart in that. There's a coldness. It's the Capricorn card. Capricorn has their emotions locked in a box to get the job done.
I mean, looking at the robe now, I see all the darkness, but I see the tinges of green too.
Yeah.
So I wonder
if
there's kind of like the love diffused it amongst the darkness, where it's kind of the nature and nurture aspect of things. One of the things I found on my own journey is sometimes we tend to focus more on the nurture aspect than the nature. And I think that there actually needs to be a balance of both of those for healthy individuals. And the other cool thing about this card too is you have like the dark, which I would say is like the nature aspect and the nurture of the green. But then there's a little grapes on that card, which is like the purple color would be the crown chakra. So it's like you get that spiritual depth of everything, that spiritual fruit from having a bit of both, because you need the nurture after you get a lot of the nature, because the nature is that bitter medicine. But that's how you get to the higher levels of understanding, which I think is what allows you to actually appreciate the material wealth of everything.
Definitely. That's a great way of looking at it.
That's all I have on that. Do you have anything else?
No, I think it's great. Yeah, we said that it's Capricorn card. I don't know if we mentioned that the King of Swords is Gemini, but it's Gemini. And the King of Cups was Pisces. And the King of Wands is Leo. And I'm a Leo, and it's Leo season.
Oh, no.
You're welcome for that.
So bring yours up. Like, talk to me about your card. I'm not going to hold it up and show it to you, although I'm really trying to.
Do it. It's okay.
No, I don't want to.
We can show it to each other.
Whoa.
Calm down. No, so King of Wands. So obviously it's this very rooted big tree, and it is on fire, but it's not burning. Because it's holding everything together. It's there's definitely, because it's Leo energy and it's like double fire, I feel like that's like a lot of heart centered.
Okay.
The King of Wands is obviously, the King of Wands knows that their role is to hold things together and uphold the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
But the King of Wands also really wants to like be in the action. The King of Wands is a little jealous of the knight that gets to go off and do all the things, because they want to do all the things, but they also understand the importance of being at the heart of the kingdom and not leaving it.
So they want to be able to travel more, but they also stay there just so they can help create the kingdom that they want.
Yes.
If it's best for everybody, I should say.
Yes.
I like that. I also like the aspect of the tree in your card, how it kind of has the deep roots where it's not swayed, how you had mentioned, and also kind of it has like a bunch of branches, and how you said it's on fire, or there's fire around it, but it's not actually on fire. I think that's a cool concept.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm like drawing a blank on anything to say on the King of Wands, so
That's okay. I'm going to be Ross for a minute, and I'm going to say, let's look at the Rider-Waite-Smith card, and let's look at his orange robe. It's like an orangey red robe, and that it talks about like the sacral chakra, and then around, like his mantle is green for the heart chakra, and then he's surrounded by yellow.
There you go.
Definitely got all of that. Those three chakras in alignment. Am I doing my good Ross impression?
I think so. What about the lizard?
Oh my God, I can never remember what the lizard is there for. I don't use this deck as much as I use other decks, but I know that all animals that make their presence known are all a spirit guide. So this is a spirit guide.
So one thing about the lizard is that could be a salamander for one thing, and not a lizard. Salamanders are fire, so they're associated with fire. Then you have the dragons up on the top. Dragons are symbols of knowledge and wisdom. And then the other little reptile there is, again, just like a symbol of wisdom. So it's like that creative knowledge, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
You got me into being myself again. Oh,
Yay,
man.
welcome back.
Welcome back. Yeah, I feel like we hit everything. Do you want to do a quick recap? Is there anything else you want to add to any of this conversation?
I think that there's so much more to be said about all of these cards, and everybody I'm sure has read or learned or heard different things, but I think that the most important recap of court cards in general, especially kings, is that they're all fire plus. And so if you ever find yourself kind of confused of what that means, then kind of take a look at the other cards in the spread, or maybe around what question you asked, and see like how you can embody that energy.
I think that's a very good point. So real quick, temperance is kind of balance, alchemy. What was the other word that you had used, or other words?
Definitely it's a card about alchemy. It's about balance. It's about merging heaven and earth, like the spiritual and the physical, and kind of taking your hands off the wheel and letting the universe create magic on your behalf.
Ooh, well said. You should put that on a t-shirt. What's like the bullet points for King of Swords?
King of Swords is just being able to speak from a clear place and not being afraid of really like being in touch with your power, and your power with words, and your power with your mind.
King of Cups is just being in a stable place in your emotions and being able to kind of ride them out and observe them and not be taken away by them.
Yes.
King of Pentacles?
King of Pentacles is being very grounded in the material realm and being able to create stability for yourself while understanding that stability is forever fluctuating.
And King of Wands?
It's completely ignited passion and creativity and strength, and upholding all of these things without basically like burning yourself down.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that the King of Wands is your favorite of the kings.
It's not.
It's not?
No.
Wow. I failed. No.
You did not fail. It's just Leo season, and I'm feeling a little extra and a little excited. I'm not always, it's funny, I'm not always in touch with my sun, which is in Leo, but it's in my 10th house, which is the 10th house is the top of the natal chart. So that's how you're seen out in the world. So, but my moon is in Scorpio, that doesn't ever want to be seen and wants to just like help other people and kind of stay behind the scenes and be a little secretive and just stew in their own emotions. But the month where the sun is in my outward expression house, then I can't even help myself. I'm just going to be extra and obnoxious. So you're welcome.
Well said. Stefanie, I want to thank you for coming on. I want to tell the listeners too, thank you for listening. If you have any questions for Stefanie or myself, there will be links in the show notes. You can reach out to me via email. You can reach out to Stefanie and myself on Instagram. All of that stuff will be down there. And if you would like to get a copy of the Moon Void Tarot deck, you can go to moonvoidtarot.com or etsy.com/shop/moonvoidtarot. Yep.
Thank you so much, Ross. And thank you everybody for listening. I can't wait. We are all out of minors and court cards. So next week it's all devil.
Thank you for listening. If you love this show, one kind review goes a long way. If you have a question or comment you'd like read on air, please send your email to staff@spiritualphoenixstudios.com or use the link in the show notes.